Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is all about applying to medical school. I'm going to be giving you a step-by-step guide of how to get into medical school, all the way from deciding you want to study medicine up to receiving that all-important offer. I know from experience that the whole application process is quite daunting, and if it's something you know nothing about, it can be hard to know how to start putting your application together and what you actually need to be able to be successful in your application. So I'm going to be going through everything that I did in order to get into medical school, along with my UCAT and BMAT results, so you can sort of just see like the kind of level that I was at. I've also got a big box here of all the resources that I used when I was putting together my application. So I'm also going to be sharing these with you to give you ideas of things that might be helpful for you to do before certain elements of the application. So in case you are new to my channel and you don't know anything about me, then I got offers from Nottingham, Birmingham and Manchester. I am now at Nottingham. I also applied to Cambridge, but I didn't get in, and I've made a couple of videos about that. And then my fifth choice was biomedical science at Southampton, which I also got an offer for. So let's get started with the medical school application journey. So the first thing you need to do before you even think about all the other elements of the application is to decide if medicine is really for you. Now, it can sound really cool to say, yeah, I want to be a doctor when I'm older, but do you actually know what it means to be a doctor? Do you know what the role involves? Do you know what your life is likely to be like when you finally do graduate and become a doctor? Do you know what medical school is going to be like? Do you know how long the course is? Do you know the different elements of studying medicine? And I think it's really important to establish right from the beginning what your reason is for wanting to study medicine. Now, this might change as we go through our journey, but just the beginning, just think about what is it that draws you to medicine. Is it the fact that you get to be in a very people-based career where you're always going to be seeing lots of different people and interacting with people? Is it the more scientific nature of it and how you have to use your clinical and analytical skills to solve a problem, putting together all sorts of areas of science to treat a patient? Whatever reason it is, just have a good think about it. Maybe even write down this initial reason. If your reason is that your parents or someone in your family is a doctor and you want to follow in their footsteps, think really carefully. Is it actually something that suits you? Don't just do it because someone else is doing it or because you've seen that your parents are doctors. Do you actually want to do it? And also, don't just do it for the prestige, and this goes for applying to Oxford or Cambridge as well. Don't just do it because it will be cool to say that you study medicine. Like, you actually have to study this subject for between 5 and 6 years, and you have to become a doctor at the end of it. Think very carefully about this decision. So if you're struggling at this point and you think you do want to study medicine but you don't really know what's involved with it, I would suggest a good place to start is to just do a lot of background reading. Invest in some books. There were quite a few that I read to do with the lives of doctors. So I read this one, Trust Me, I'm a Junior Doctor. That was really good. And I read this one, In Stitches. This was about an A&E doctor. And then obviously this book is really famous now, This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, and he also has a second book. This would be really good to read to see the sort of emotional challenges that come with being a doctor as well. When I started thinking about my application, I also read books about the application process itself. So I read this one. Obviously some of these are going to be quite outdated now, so you might want to get a new one if you're thinking of getting a book, or you can just probably find stuff online. I got this Oxford and Cambridge 2017 entry one for getting into Oxbridge specifically, and I got another Getting into Medical School 2017 entry. So I had a few books. Get a newer version of a book, or just use things online like YouTube videos or articles. The Medic portal are really good. They have lots of articles on the different elements of the application. So you've now read all about the lives of doctors and you think it is something that's for you. But how can you be sure? Now, this brings me on to my next step, which is work experience. Now, lots of people will try and get work experience almost to tick a box so that when they do apply, it's something they can put on their personal statement. it's something they can talk about in interviews. And that is true, you do need work experience to apply for medicine, but the reason why getting work experience is mostly important is because it teaches you about yourself and it develops your own skills and allows you to see if being a doctor is something that would suit you. So when you're looking for work experience, there's all sorts of different types. Obviously the most sought after is to actually have work experience in a hospital and be shadowing a doctor and seeing exactly what it's like to work as a doctor in the NHS. However, this can be really hard to come by. I was lucky in that I did get a week of work experience in a hospital. However, I would say this was probably one of my less valuable work experiences, and that's because it is just shadowing. So you're not having an active role so much, you're not developing your own skills, you're not pushing yourself, you're just watching someone else do it. And yeah, while I did get to sort of chat to some patients, I wasn't really able to do much, I was just observing. So it is good work experience to get because it does teach you about how the ward works and the different people in the multidisciplinary teams, so the doctors, the physiotherapists, the nurses, the pharmacists, but it doesn't really allow you to demonstrate and develop your own skills. What I found more valuable was doing active work experience or volunteering, and this is what I talked about a lot more in my personal statement and in interviews. So I had 6 months of volunteering in a care home for the elderly, where I would go in and I would chat to the residents and I would help them get engaged with different activities, and I would chat to the carers and help them out where I could. So that was great, and that was one of the first bits of work experience I did, I think back in like 2014. So this is like 3 years before I started medical school. I was already thinking about it. So it is important to start early. If you're going to get all this work experience, you want it to be long term. You don't want to just do something for like a week the summer before you apply and then be like, yeah, I've done my work experience, I know that I want to be a doctor. You want to actually do something long term to allow you to see what it's really like. So you need to think about it early. Leading on from that, the other experience that I had was I worked for a charity called Disability Challengers, which is a charity that offers play and youth schemes for children and young people who have some sort of disability, so that their parents can have some respite and the children and young people can come and socialise and do activities and have fun with us. So I did that for, I think it was over a year and a half as a Saturday job, but what it did, it allowed me to have a very active role in the care of someone else. So I was responsible for the personal care of the children and young people, for feeding them, taking them to the toilet, getting them in and out of their wheelchairs, everything that was necessary throughout the day I would be helping out with. And I think that was a lot more valuable of allowing me to develop certain skills like empathy, communication skills with people who may not communicate in the same way as I do. So for example, children or young people who were blind or deaf or non-verbal. I think work experience is really important as well because it proves to you or allows you to see whether you actually really do enjoy being around people and helping people and caring for people. And similarly, it shows the medical school that you're applying to that you really are serious about medicine. You're not just like randomly picking a course that you think will be cool. You're really thinking about it and you're exposing yourself to healthcare environments, and especially if your work experience is long term, it shows a really good commitment to the medical school that you've really been considering this career for a long time. It will also give you loads of things to talk about in interviews and give examples of. If you get asked, give me an example of a time when you helped someone or you showed empathy or you solved a problem. And while I have talked about sort of more caring or hospital experiences that I had, of course, even if they're not healthcare related, they still count as work experience. If you work in a cafe and you're interacting with people all day, this is still developing your communication skills and your ability to solve problems, work under time pressure. All types of experience do have their benefits. So don't be disheartened if you can't get hospital work experience. There will be something else you can get, and even if it isn't healthcare related, it can still be valuable in your application. So don't panic about what you can get. It's all about what you learn from the experience. It's not about what you did, what you saw, what incredible surgical procedure you saw. It's about what you learned from it, what you gained, what it taught you about yourself, what it taught you about your ability to be a good medical student and eventually a good doctor. Okay, so you've decided you want to do medicine, you've got lots of experience, it's looking great. Now, the big hurdle you've obviously got to overcome is your exam results. When it comes to GCSEs, you want to get the highest grades that you can, and that's across all subjects, because when it comes to medical school applications, in a lot of the application processes for the universities, you will receive points for the amount of A stars or A's that you got at GCSE. So I got 9.5 A stars and 1 A. I got 9.5 because I did a short course for RS, which meant I only got half a GCSE, which was really weird. But the fact that I got so many A stars allowed me to basically get full marks when it came to the GCSE points section of an application. So that was something I didn't even have to worry about. I knew that I would get the maximum score for that part of the application. So really do work hard on your GCSEs, and even if all of your peers are saying, oh, GCSEs aren't important, they don't mean anything, it's only A Levels that matter. Yes, for some people GCSEs aren't as important. For people that want to get into medical school, it will matter, and it will help you a lot if you can get as many A stars as possible. When it comes to A Levels, obviously you want to pick the subjects that the universities need, so please don't make the mistake of not doing the right subjects. Most of them require biology and chemistry, I think. I think chemistry is normally the main one, and biology is often like you can have it or you don't have to. So definitely check. But I would say if you're not really interested in biology or chemistry at that point, then maybe sort of question whether medicine is going to be the right course for you, because especially in the first term of medical school, it is very much A-level biology and chemistry again. You then obviously want to get the highest grades that you can possibly get. Most medical schools have an entry requirement of AAA, some are higher. Like I know when I applied, Birmingham was A star AA and Oxbridge were A star A star A. Things might have changed now, so check it out. But you want to be getting A's ideally in all of your subjects. If you're not and you're getting like a B in your third subject, I think often it will be okay and you will still be able to get in. But yeah, you really want to work hard. If you can, you want to get those A star grades. And again, just to tell you what I got so you can sort of track how my application process went, I got A star, A star A, I got the A stars in chemistry and biology, and I got an A in maths. So the next step of the application process is to write your personal statement. And now this can be one of the more challenging parts of the application process, because it can be very hard to put into words your desire to study medicine and to put all of your different experiences and skills into the very short character limit that you have for a personal statement. However, don't fret about this too much, because for most medical schools, the personal statement doesn't actually play that big of a role in deciding whether you get an interview and eventually get in. So I think some universities are just saying they don't even look at it anymore, because for medical students, often it's just like a very similar kind of personal statement, just like that everyone has. Some do still read them and score them. So I used this book, and this ISC medical sort of company, I use a lot of their books like for different aspects of the application. This just kind of gives you an idea of how you construct your personal statement, what things to include in it, and it gives you a lot of example personal statements. But at the end of the day, your personal statement has to be your own, it has to be unique to you. I would say with personal statements, there's 3 important things that I think you really need to include. The first is that you demonstrate that you have sort of a range of experience that has allowed you to come to the decision that medical school is for you. So like I've already talked about, whether that be in a hospital, in a caring environment, as a Saturday job, any kind of experience that you've had working with people or working in a healthcare environment, and how you've learnt things from those experiences that have meant you have wanted to pursue medicine. You want to almost tell it like a story, like you were considering studying medicine, you did more experience, you decided more and more, yes, it was for you, yes, I fit into this. You also want to include skills that you have, and you want to demonstrate with examples where you've shown those skills. So it might be that you've done Gold D&V and shown really good teamwork or leadership skills. You volunteered in your school to help teach younger students English and maths, and that led to you developing good explanatory skills and being able to empathise. And lastly, I think it's important that you demonstrate that you aren't just all about academics, that you have something more going on outside of school that you're committed to. So maybe you learn an instrument, or you play a sport competitively, you volunteer in your community. And this is something to show the medical school that you aren't just gonna study when you're at medical school. You're going to make the most of the opportunities that are there, and you're going to have the strategies in place so that when medical school or life as a doctor gets really stressful, you have something to go to. You have that stress relief. You have a means of escape from medicine so that your whole world doesn't just become being a doctor. Okay, so you've now written your personal statement, and the next step will be admissions tests. Now there's 2 admissions tests that are used in the UK. There's the UCAT, well that's what it was called when I applied. I think it might now be called the UCAT, and the BMAT. Most medical schools use the UCAT. There's a few that use the BMAT, so I know Oxford, Cambridge, Brighton, Leeds, I think, maybe some of like the London medical schools use it as well. So the key difference between them is that the BMAT is very scientifically based. It requires prior knowledge. To be honest, I can't remember much about the BMAT. I know I revised quite a lot for it, like I revised biology, chemistry and physics GCSE level. So there's an aptitude and skills section which I got 5.2 in. There's a scientific knowledge and application section where I got 5.1, so that's what you actually have to revise for. And then there's the writing task where you have to write a sort of short essay, and I got 4A. So part of the assessment is the quality of the content of the essay, and the other part is the quality of the English. My scores were pretty average. They weren't amazing, they weren't bad, they were just kind of like very mediocre. Think carefully about if you want to do the BMAT or not. The reason why it might be good to do is if your UCAT hasn't gone very well. So you get your UCAT score before you actually send it off your application, whereas you get your BMAT score after you've sent off your application. So if your BMAT doesn't go well and you apply for all BMAT universities, you could send your application off and then it comes back that your BMAT result was really poor, and then you're at risk of not getting any offers. So maybe it's quite good to have a mix between both of them. If you've got a really strong UCAT and you're very confident with it, then just go for all of the UCAT medical schools, and that's probably the safest thing to do. So I obviously went for 3 UCAT medical schools and 1 BMAT. So the UCAT is an aptitude test. It's very time pressured. It assesses you in various different aspects of your kind of like intelligence. I don't really know what to call it. It's verbal reasoning, which is where you have to really quickly read a bit of text, take the key points from it and then answer questions about it. It tests your quantitative reasoning, which is basically like quite simple maths. It also assesses abstract reasoning, which is your ability to kind of see patterns in shapes. And I didn't have this section, but I think now it has a decision analysis section or something. I don't really know much about this section. And then you have the situational judgment section, which is your ability to choose appropriate responses to certain like clinical situations in a clinical environment or in a sort of medical school environment. So for all of the sections I used, again, a similar looking book. I have 2 of these actually, I don't know why I have 2, but basically these have loads of practice questions. And what I would say about the UCAT is it's not something you can so much revise for, but don't make the mistake of not preparing for it, because it is something you can very much prepare for. You need to practice a lot, I think, to get good at doing UCAT questions, because there's lots of little tricks, and these books go through those little tricks really well, because the UCAT isn't about getting every single question right and spending a long time thinking about every question. It's about moving quickly. It is such a time pressured exam. Without going into loads and loads of detail, I'm going to give a few tips that I would recommend. The first is that you practice using the software, because when you do this exam you have to go to like a centre and you sit and do it on a computer, and I think it's good to practice doing it on a computer screen with like the on-screen calculator. You can't bring in your own calculator, so practice actually like navigating around the screen, practice using the calculator and going to the next pages and flagging questions and things like that, so you know how the system works. The next point I'd make is, like I've just mentioned, the flag function. Definitely use this. So if you're doing a question and you're really struggling on it and you don't know what the answer is, my number 1 tip is to not care about it. You just have to let go of whatever you had when you've done exams in the past, when you felt that you want to get every question right. You can't do that in the UCAT. You just have to accept you can't work out this question right now. Put a guess, because there's no negative marking, so just guess an answer, flag it. There's a little like flag button you can click to flag the question, and just move on and just keep moving on. Every time you get really stuck and you just can't figure something out, just flag it, guess, move on. And this is what these books like go on about a lot, because it is really important. If you do finish the section and you have time left, you can then go back, you can click something to go back through all the flagged questions and you can have another go at working them out. But you want to make sure that you always want to put an answer for everything, and you just don't want to run out of time, because the thing with the UCAT is, especially with the quantitative reasoning section, which is like the maths section, you can get these really, really long, complicated questions that require lots of reading and lots of steps of working out the answer, and it could take you like 2 minutes to solve just one problem. Then you might go to the next screen and there'll be really, really short questions that barely require any thinking and you can work out in 10 seconds. So because everything is worth the same amount of marks, every question is 1 mark, you don't want to waste 2 minutes getting that 1 mark from a complicated question when you could have got like 5 marks from doing lots of quick, simple questions. For the abstract reasoning section as well, this is the one with the shapes, I practiced this loads and I thought that I'd got really good at it. And then when I was in the exam, I just couldn't get anything. Like, I couldn't see any of the patterns. I don't know if it was the environment, the time pressure, stress maybe of knowing how important the exam was. I just couldn't see any of the patterns. I couldn't work any of them out. But I just kept guessing and I kept moving on, because eventually there would be a few that I would know. So I found those ones that I did know and I got them. And the others I was just guessing. There's only going to be like 4 or 5 different options. So you always have like quite high percentage of actually guessing the right answer. For completeness, I'll just tell you my UCAT score, because, you know, I'm being very open in this video, I'm telling you everything. Scores for each section are between 300 and 900, and it says here most people taking the test will score between 500 and 700. The average score for each subtest is 600. So I got 600 in the verbal reasoning section, I got 800 in quantitative reasoning, I got 640 in abstract reasoning, and I got band 1 in situational judgment. And situational judgment is a section you really need to do well in, because if you get band 4, which is the lowest, I think like a lot of medical schools don't even consider your application. But if you keep working through examples, so you can use books like I've got, or you can use the mock exams on the UCAT website. Definitely do them, 100%. Don't leave it to the last minute to get practicing, because this is not an exam that you can afford to not prepare for. So the next stage in the medical school application is picking your medical scores. Even though on UCAS you can apply to 5 unis, you can only apply to 4 medical schools. You want to choose where you apply tactically. I have made a whole other video on this, which I think pretty comprehensively covers everything that I would say at this point as well. So I'm not going to go through in detail all about tactically choosing a medical school. Go and watch my other video if you're interested. But basically the crux of what I say is that you want to really try and play to your strengths. So if a medical school is really going to take into account your UCAT score, if they're going to have a UCAT cut-off where anyone below a certain UCAT score doesn't even get considered for interview, then you only want to apply to those ones if you have a good UCAT, a really high or sort of like above average UCAT. If it's very borderline or it's a sort of poorer UCAT, you maybe want to avoid universities that have this cut-off, because the risk is that your score will fall below their cutoff, and so you won't even be considered. They won't look at your grades, they won't look at your personal statement or anything. Ones like Nottingham and Birmingham, they had a sort of points-based system, so they gave you points based on your GCSEs, your A level predictions, your UCAT, and possibly your personal statement or possibly not. This gave you a score, and the score determined whether you would get an interview or not. So if you have like quite a well-rounded application, like maybe everything is average or just above average, this is quite a good approach. So for me, I had good GCSEs, so I wanted to really utilise that, and I wanted to apply to medical schools that would take those GCSEs into account when they were considering me for an interview. You want to think of all of the components of the application, and you want to maximise the amount of points or the amount of consideration you're going to get from the medical school based on your strengths and your weaknesses. So finally then, you receive your offer for an interview. So you've come so far, and now this is like the final hurdle, other than obviously achieving your A-level grades. When I applied, I think there was one medical school that didn't do interviews, and that was Edinburgh. Everywhere else does interviews. Some do differ, so like Oxbridge do traditional interviews. I think it was Southampton schools that do group interviews or group tasks. You have to check out for every university what they do, but the majority of medical schools do MMIs, which are multiple mini interviews. You go into a room and there's kind of lots of different stations, and you rotate around the stations. Maybe there'll be about 5-6 minutes each, and you'll have a 1-minute gap between each station, and each one is a different task or it's a different sort of style of interview. So they might be things like asking you about your work experience, it might be asking you about an ethical scenario, it might be asking you about medicine in the media at the moment. So if you were going to medical school now, the chances are they might have a station about coronavirus. It might be sort of role play scenarios. Anything really could come up in these MMIs, so I really can't give you an indication of what you're going to experience. All of the stations that I did were all very, very different. I don't think I got the same station up once in any of my 3 MMI interviews. What I did do before interviews though was I did use this book. Again, it's the same style as the other books I've shown you. I would really recommend it. This just has loads of different example questions for you to work through, and it has like examples of good answers, so you can just have a think about how you would answer certain things. One important part of the interviews that you need to be prepared for, obviously I've already said about keeping up to date with medicine in the media, and sort of maybe having a few like scientific articles up your sleeve that you could talk about if they said like name something new in the medical world. But other than that, you want to be familiar with medical sort of ethics. You don't have to know a lot about this, but I think like the general principles it would be good to know. I read this little medical ethics book. It was very, very short and just told me about the key sort of concepts. But most importantly, it's that there's 4 pillars for medical ethics, and they are beneficence, which is doing good, non-maleficence, which is not doing harm, justice, and confidentiality. And with those 4 pillars, you can kind of approach any kind of ethical dilemma that you might be faced with. An example of a sort of good ethical kind of dilemma, if you're just interested in sort of doing some wider reading, this is a good book, The Children Act by Ian McEwan, and it was also made into like I don't know if it was a film or like a drama series. So this is about the refusal of medical treatment. Which is an interesting topic in any case, but it was particularly interesting in the case of this 17-year-old boy. There's interesting debates to be had about young people making medical decisions and whether they have the competence and the capacity to be able to make decisions about their care. Just make sure you're aware of it and you know some of the key principles. I had this big pad which I used to sort of make just like general notes that I would then read before my interviews. So I had a section on medicine in the world, which is, like I said, recent like scientific articles, recent discoveries, or some interesting things that I just read that I thought, like, if I was asked to tell me about something interesting in medicine that's occurred recently, I could talk about. I then had a work experience section. So in this section, I have basically done a log of every single day that I had any kind of work experience, and I've put down what I did, what I learned, the skills that I developed, particular sort of challenges I came across, and how I solved problems, so that before your interviews you can just have a quick look through and remind yourself of what you did on your work experience, because some of these experiences might have been like 2 years prior to your interview, so you might not remember all the details. So I would recommend making a log of what you do, what you see, and obviously what you learn. And then I just had a section about me generally. If you were asked to give an example of a time when you were a good team player, or give example of a time when you led other people, would you be able to just give that example off the top of your head and explain it well, or would you be stuttering and having to really think about it? Because importantly, in these MMIs, you don't have a lot of time. Like, you only have like 6 minutes on each station, so you don't want to waste like a minute sitting and thinking about an example of a time when you've been a leader. You want to have these things kind of prepared, so if they come up you can just immediately get into your answer and get talking. One way you could practice doing this is to have flashcards. So this is what I did. I had flashcards of like times I'd shown empathy, times I'd shown good leadership, times I'd shown good organisation skills, good time management, all different kind of attributes that I had where I demonstrated them. I had a flashcard for each one, so I could ask myself the question, practice giving an answer, and flipping it around to see like if I'd missed any sort of important like good stories that I could tell. So this has been a long video, I'm sure. That brings us to the end. So after your interview you will then hopefully get an offer, and hopefully you might even get a few offers so that you can then decide which one you want to take. The application process is hard, it requires a lot of time. It's almost like doing another A level, but I really do believe that if you think carefully about your application and you go through step by step and you put everything you've got into every part of your application, you have a great chance of being successful. So thanks very much for watching this video. If you have any questions, obviously you can leave comments or you can send me a message on Instagram and I will try and answer all of the questions. Subscribe to my channel if you're interested in more videos about medicine, and yeah, good luck in your application. I hope this video has been helpful to you. So yeah, bye and see you very soon.